Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Angela and I am the host of the Honey and Hustle video podcast, which is also hosted here on this channel as well. And today we're going to be talking about 3 apps for podcast discovery. So if you're a podcaster and you are using, of course, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcast, I'm sure you're already familiar with the fact that you are competing against some of the biggest podcasts in the world in terms of gaining and finding new people to add to your audience. And that can be really intimidating if you're first starting out and you're just looking for your first 100 or first 1,000 listeners and streamers. So there are 3 apps that are really popular for podcast discovery that we're going to talk about in today's video. The first one is Good Pods. If you've been on Twitter at all, you probably have heard of Good Pods. Good Pods, as they say, is the Goodreads for podcasters. So it's where you can find recommendations from your friends on what they're listening to and find new shows if you are a podcast listener. And so for podcast hosts, that's really incredible because it's kind of like word of mouth for your show. And it's easier for people who are friends to share podcasts that they're listening to with other people that may be interested in those topics as well. Good Pods is probably by far the most popular podcast discovery app right now because it just has widespread popularity among people who are really interested in listening and sharing in the same app. So you can get your RSS feed, get it in there pretty quickly. You can join groups to share your episodes. You can share what you're listening to as a podcast host or a podcast listener. It just kind of meets all the needs that you would want in a strictly podcast app. But again, maybe let's say your friends really aren't into podcasts like that. So here's the next one that you might like as a podcast host or a podcast listener. Bullhorn is a podcast app that their claim to fame is a little bit different. They love to have give podcast hosts the ability to go live for their audience. So kind of like Twitter Spaces, but on a completely separate app, which is cool, where people can also listen to your show after the live stream. So that's really interesting. I think I keep saying interesting because I think it can be difficult to convince someone to go to a completely different app just to listen to a live stream when maybe they could experience live stream on Twitch or YouTube or now Twitter Spaces. But I do think it's really popular in how they are trying to meet the needs of podcast hosts in podcast discovery and really creating a community with their listeners, right? So really giving their listeners that up and close access to their favorite podcast hosts, probably get behind the scenes questions asked and answered, and really just carve out a space in their phone for their favorite podcast. So if you're looking to not only grow your show, but grow your community and grow really true fans of your show, Bullhorn might be a really good platform for you. So this last one is a little bit niche, and it did kind of start outside of the US, but is slowly making its way into the US market. In fact, the guy that founded this app actually lives in Raleigh, which is like 30 minutes down the road. So this app is called Podroom, and Podroom is really interesting in that maybe you're not a video podcaster, but you are a podcaster who does video snippets of them talking about their episodes or talking about their guest or their show in general. Podroom is really amazing in that they allow for video snippets to be uploaded onto the platform, and people can discover you through those video snippets and then go listen to your show within the app as well. I think that's a really unique feature for maybe people who are either making clips or making audiograms from their show and want to have another place to share them where they can get discovered very quickly. So kind of like a TikTok, YouTube Shorts for podcast. So that's really awesome if you're trying to dive into video but maybe don't want to do a full video podcast episode but just want to have little clips that you share on social media. Podroom could be another platform for you that you're interested in. So those are just it from me. I do think, of course, distributing your podcast to Apple and Spotify and Google Play will always be the name of the game. But if there's anything you can do to just increase your reach and get in front of other indie podcast listeners, I think they're worth a shot. So those are it for me. Tell me which one you've already heard of. Tell me which one you're using now. Tell me which one you want to try. And like this video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you want to know more about podcasting and video podcasting. And I'll see you guys in the next video.